are 17 new green spells in Magic the Gathering's Foundations set. Let's see how they stack up against all the other colors, and spoiler alert, I think they might do the best. Let's check it out, starting with the commons. Ambush Wolf is a 2 and a green creature wolf. It has flash, and when this creature enters, exile up to one target card from a graveyard, and it's a 4/2. This creature specializes in offering 1-for-1 trades against a higher mana value play in a limited format. That's not the most optimal commander strategy, and even though this has a little incidental graveyard hate, I'm going to place this as a hard no. Beastkin Ranger is a 2 and a green creature elf ranger with trample. Whenever another creature you control enters, this creature gets +1/+0 until the end of the turn, and it's a 3/3. The fact that this is an elf really saves it in the rankings. Elves tend to go very wide, and this is a pretty good payoff for that kind of strategy, letting you deal a bunch of damage to a player, at least one time. I think it's fairly replaceable, but if you're just starting out with an elf deck, this is a fine include. I'm going to put this in Jank. Cackling Prowler is a 3 and a green creature hyena rogue with ward 2. The morbid trigger says, at the beginning of your end step, if a creature died this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, and it's a 4/3. The stats are pretty good on a 4 mana creature, especially with that ward 2. If you are in a strategy that enables the morbid trigger to happen on every end step, this will also become somewhat of a problem. It also plays into the +1/+1 counter synergies that I know a lot of decks have going on. This looks to be a fair option in a number of different decks. I'm going to throw this in Jank. Treetop Snare Spinner is a 3 and a green creature spider with reach and death touch. For 2 and a green, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, activate only as a sorcery, and it's a 1/4. The fact that this has reach, death touch, and 4 toughness makes this a pretty impressive creature. When you add on the mana sync ability with those counters, it elevates the creature even further. This is an excellent defensive option in any deck with green, and excels in +1/+1 counter strategies or spider strategies. This card is nice, for sure. Before I go any further, take a second right now to subscribe to the channel. You can catch all the other colors I've done so far, and I've got a bunch more commander content coming your way with a bend towards budget. Elfsworn Giant is a 3 and 2 green creature giant with reach. The landfall trigger says, whenever a land you control enters, create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token, and it's a 5/3. Making more bodies, even small bodies, will always have a place. The fact that the trigger is attached to landfall, which you're hopefully doing every turn anyway, makes this a little bit of a better option. Of course, in landfall decks, or decks with a heavy ramp package, this is going to excel there. Even if you aren't doing elf things or giant things, this will create a lot of blockers, it'll create a bunch of sacrifice fodder. This does a decent amount. I'm going to place this in Fringe. Apothecary Stomper is a 4 and 2 green creature elephant with vigilance. When this creature enters, choose 1. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature you control, or gain 4 life, and it's a 4/4. The body on this elephant is pretty small. The abilities that it grants you are also kind of negligible for a 6 mana play. I think there's plenty of better options out there. This is going to be a hard no. Eager Truffle Snout is a 2 and a green creature boar with trample. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, create a food token, and it's a 4/2. Getting 1 food a turn that starts the turn after you play this is a pretty marginal benefit on what is a pretty fragile creature. I'm not a big fan of this one, even in food decks. I'm gonna put this in hard no. Felling Blow is a 2 and a green sorcery. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then that creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. This is a fine creature removal spell in a +1/+1 counters deck exclusively. Still, there are more efficient options, but this is flavorful. It plays into the theme. I'm gonna put this in Jank. Elvish Regrower is a 2 and 2 green creature elf druid. When this creature enters, return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand, and it's a 4/3. The elf creature type is relevant, but even if you're not doing elf things, this effect is going to be powerful in Commander generally. The fact that this targets any permanent instead of just a creature or a land is a pretty big game, and if you are able to manage getting multiple triggers of this by looping it somehow with a Displacer Kitten or whatever, you could be accruing a bunch of card advantage. This is a good option with a strong effect and decent stats. I'm going to put this in nice. Needletooth Pack is a 3 and 2 green creature dinosaur. The morbid trigger says, at the beginning of your end step, if a creature died this turn, put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature creature you control. It's a 4/5. If your deck is able to support the Morbid Trigger on your end step every turn, this is a pretty good payoff attached to a solid body. If you're doing counter things as well, it'll elevate this creature's status. This is doing enough to place this in Fringe. Quakestrider Ceratops is a 3 and 3 green creature dinosaur 12/8 with absolutely no text. It is vanilla as it comes with 12 power. The truth is, even though this is a vanilla fatty, you can do a lot of cool things with 12 power. There's ways you can sacrifice these creatures to draw that many cards. You can fling them at your opponents. If you are able to passively give it trample through a number of different options, this turns into a real beater. This is a Fringe card, and I'm excited to see this vanilla fatty. I very much am. Loot Exuberant Explorer is a 2 and a green legendary creature beast noble. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. For 4 and 2 green, you can tap Loot. Look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card with mana value less than or equal to the number of lands you control from among them and put it onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order, and it's a 1/4. The additional land per turn ability already makes this a powerful creature. The 6 mana tap ability lets you look pretty deep into your library to cheat out that creature right onto the battlefield. The fact that you can do this over and over and over again makes this pretty potent. If you are able to get something you want on top of your library, it makes it even better. This is a very powerful card that does everything green wants to do. This is a chase card. Mossborn Hydra is a 2 and a green creature elemental Hydra with trample. This creature enters with a +1/+1 counter on it. The landfall trigger says, whenever a land you control enters, double the number of +1/+1 counters on this creature, and it's a 0/0. This will turn into a threat in any deck playing with green, but will be a massive, massive problem in a landfall deck. Only 4 lands will turn this into a 16/16 trampler, and that's not all that hard to do in a landfall deck. Like I said before, this is generally powerful. It fits in certain strategies better than others, but this is going in nice. Spinner of Souls is a 2 and a green creature spider spirit with reach. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Put that card into your hand and the rest onto the bottom of your library in a random order, and it's a 4/3. This turning a creature you control dying into a creature in your hand is a pretty powerful effect, especially in creature dense decks. You are liable to put a bunch of land and other non-creature spells on the bottom of your library if this triggers a bunch of times, but hopefully you're doing creature things and you can rely on the creatures being replaced over and over and over again. The stats are also pretty good. It has reach. This is a nice card. Sylvan Scavenging is a 1 and 2 green enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, choose 1. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Create a 3/3 green raccoon creature token if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. The very clear downside of this spell is you need a creature on the battlefield for this to do anything at all. That's not all that hard to manage, but it is worth noting. This will go pretty well in +1/+1 counter decks as you accrue those on your end step every turn. If you want to do creature spam stuff, the 3/3 body is pretty decent and you can get that every turn as long as you meet that power threshold. I don't think this is generally powerful enough to make it into any green deck, but there's plenty of decks that will want this. I'm going to put this in Fringe. Preposterous Proportions is a 5 and 2 green sorcery. Creatures you control get +10/+10 and gain vigilance until the end of the turn. I'm a massive fan of these rampaging squirrels on this art, and it is absolutely tainting my read of this card. I absolutely love it. Even though it doesn't give trample, I think it's a super fun variation on the overrun effects. You don't get the all-important evasion element, but having them gain vigilance at least lets you defend against a crackback if there is one. I'm all about this card. The +10/+10 is really massive. I'm going to put this in nice. Quilled Great Worm is a 4 and 2 green creature worm with trample. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage during your turn, put that many +1/+1 counters on it. You may cast this card from your graveyard by removing 6 counters from among creatures you control in addition to paying its other costs, and it's a 7/7. The passive ability alone will let you run away with games if you are able to get that combat damage through to players. And if you are able to manage that one time, even if you're not in a +1/+1 counters deck, that offers a way to get this back onto the battlefield from your graveyard. If you are in a +1/+1 counters deck, this is even better because you don't need it to work the turn you play it. You can cast this whenever as you get more and more counters on your stuff as your game plan progresses. This is a powerful trampling option that won't necessarily win you the game on the turn it's played, but probably will if you're allowed to untap with it on the next turn. That'll do it for all of the new spells printed in the Foundation set from Magic the Gathering. I do think this is the best performing color of all of them, and that kind of makes sense because they're trying to give green a little bit more oomph in Standard, and they at least did it in Commander. Let me know what you think I got wrong. Remember to subscribe to the channel right here and right now, like the video, and I'll catch you next time for some more monkeying around.